everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're doing well and having a fantastic week. Today's video is all about parrot feathers, feather condition, what you can do to help your birds at home, and if there is a problem, what the causes might be. Now, just as a disclaimer, I'm not a vet. I do get a lot of DMs, comments, that kind of thing, asking what's wrong with my bird. I can't say what's wrong with your bird, but I can give you the holistic solutions at home, and I'll talk about those later on in the video, which could improve feather condition. It's also important to remember that once the feathers have grown in and the blood supply has stopped, then they can't improve until the next molt. So you could be doing everything right at home, but you'll have to wait until the next molt to make sure that the feather condition has improved, because you can tell a lot about a parrot's health by the look and condition of their feathers. Now, one other thing I would like to mention is a lot of parrot feather issues can be helped by diet. If you are feeding your birds a poor quality diet, it is going to show in the feathers. And again, there's a lot of misconceptions as to what a good parrot diet is. If you're feeding low quality pellets that have all this great marketing campaign that they're brilliant, and actually they're made out of wheat, corn and soy and sugar and salt. If you haven't seen my pellets video, I'll leave a card at the top and a link in the description, because there's a lot of information you may not be aware of about parrot pellets. Also, if you're only giving your bird maybe a leaf of spinach or maybe a stick of carrot a couple of times a week, that's not enough for your bird either. The perfect bird diet, as a general rule, obviously there's going to be species specific requirements, is to have a lot of fresh vegetables, small amount of fruit, sprouted seeds, grains, legumes. I've spoken about this a lot. And of course, if your bird is one of those stubborn birds who's a bit fussy about vegetables, I have a video on that as well. Please keep trying, you will get there, and I'll leave as much information down in the description for you. So let's start off with feather loss. Sometimes birds can end up with bald patches across their body, on their heads, the back of the neck, and sometimes where the bald patches are an indicator as to what could be the issue. For example, if it's on the back of the head or the neck, that could be a bullying problem. If your bird is with another bird or they come into contact with other birds, there could definitely be a possibility that they are getting bullied or overpreened. So that's something to consider. Your bird might also have an external parasite such as mites, lice. Again, please go to the vet and get that checked out. Also, there is something called PBFD, and that is definitely something to explore with your vet. That's not something that anyone on the internet can work out for you. So again, please get in contact with your vet for any issues that you think your bird may have. One of the other ways that birds may lose feathers is underneath their wings and on their chest, and that could be a sign of plucking, and plucking is a whole other video in itself. I may end up doing a video on that, but there are either potentially pathological or environmental reasons why your bird could be plucking. That's really something to explore. If that is something you would like to go down and you've got a full bill of health from your vet, you can actually contact me and David at Best Behaved Birds, and we do behaviour consultations, and we can try and work out with you what the causes might be and how you can remedy them at home, as long as your bird has got a full bill of health from your vet. So if you'd like to contact us, again, the information is going to be down in the description. Next up are stress bars. I'm going to pop a picture here of what stress bars look like, but essentially they are horizontal bars that go across the actual feather itself. There'll be a different colour, usually depigmented. They'll be white or black, sometimes brown, and they'll be fairly obvious that there's something wrong with the feather. They'll also be quite brittle, and the feather will actually sort of dip inwards where the stress bars are. Now, stress bars are tricky. When there are young birds who have stress bars, it's sometimes that they haven't been fed enough and had enough feedings when they're growing. Sometimes it's temperature changes. For older birds, it can be any kind of period of extreme stress, but it has to be while the feather is growing. As I said at the start, if the feather has already grown, then there's nothing really that can come through in that regard. But stress bars always happen during the formation of the feather. So if your bird has gone through an extreme stress during that time, but then the stress has eased and they're doing really well, those stress bars are still going to be on your bird's feathers until their next molt. So that's something to consider too. So even if you've got everything right, they could still be around until their next molt. It's also worth considering that some birds will have natural stripes on their feathers. That's perfectly normal for some birds, but have a look at the actual condition of the feather. Where the stress bars will be, it will be brittle, there will be an indent in the feather, and you'll be able to see that they're not formed quite right. Another factor in stress bars is nutrition, and I'm not going to keep banging on about it, but I will mention it at the end. But again, if you need any help with nutrition, that kind of thing, please leave a comment down below. We can work some things out, or if you'd like a one-on-one bit of help from me and David, of course, contact us at Best Behaved Birds, because we would absolutely love to speak to you. The next thing to talk about is bronzing, and this is something that people really get confused with other feather issues. Bronzing is just the natural wear and tear of your feathers. It usually means that they are due a molt, just because they're quite old and they need to grow into nice fresh feathers. Now, something that doesn't help with bronzing is the oils on our hands and our face. Now, some birds, such as conures, love a cuddle as long as you're doing it in the right way and not triggering hormones. But unfortunately, us touching our birds on different sort of feathers can actually leave the oils within the bird's feathers and they just can't get them out. And once a feather has been bronzed, it's not going to change until the next molt. It doesn't matter how many times you bathe them, that feather is basically ruined now until the next molt. Now, it's not necessarily bad for their welfare. It could potentially cause some more difficulties or challenges when flying, you know, around the house, or if you free fly your birds, that kind of thing, then it could make it slightly harder, but it's not a medical condition for bronzing. But again, if you're confused between the two, please get it checked out. It's worth considering as well that if your bird is really heavily bronzed because you've been touching them all over, which try and avoid because it really does trigger the hormones, it can actually stop their waterproofing abilities. So if they're having a bath and they're staying wet for longer, just make sure that they are in a nice warm room. Please don't use hair dryers on them because a lot of them contain Teflon, which is toxic, but just keep them in a nice warm room. You can have a little snuggle with a towel maybe, that if your bird's like that, but that's just another thing to consider with bronzing too. So next up is molting, and if you aren't aware of what molting is, birds lose their feathers naturally 1 to 2 times a year. It's not all at once, they don't suddenly become naked, but they will gradually lose their feathers and replace them with brand new ones. But molting is a really stressful process on the body, and if your bird is molting, David's actually got a video on that. I'll leave a card at the top in the link in the description. But I will talk about some of the key ways that you can help them, such as additional protein, bathing, that kind of thing, at the end of the video. But it's totally normal for your bird to molt, and it's a really stressful time for them. They're really itchy, grouchy, and there's going to be feathers absolutely everywhere. The last point I wanted to touch upon is just scruffy feathers in general. This can be an indicator that there's something wrong with your bird, so as I said so many times throughout this video, please get them checked out if you're not sure. However, it could be that your bird is due a molt. When it comes to that point, you either get bronzing or you just get a really scruffy looking bird. Their tail feathers might be a bit sort of scruffed up, same with their wing feathers. That's totally normal and that's okay, as long as that's why the bird's feathers are a bit scruffed up. Scruffy feathers can also be due to age. I do love seeing sort of little old man birds that are a bit scruffed up. I think it's adorable, and that's totally normal as well. It's just one of those things that happens when birds get older. Again, as I said, diet can definitely be a real issue as to why a bird might look scruffy. But another one that you may not have thought about is that the bird's cage might be a bit too small for them, or maybe even too much stuff in the cage. If their tail feather is quite scruffed up and not really well kept, maybe even their wing feathers as well, they could be rubbing themselves on the bars too often, and that's because they might not have enough room to move around, or they're kind of brushing up against their toys. So really do look at your bird's setup to see what could be the problem. And Scampy is just going to start screaming, so why don't we get him out? You dancing? Wow, aren't you a smart man? So after all of this information, you'll be wondering, how can I get my bird's feathers in great condition? And there are lots of different ways that you can do this. As I've said before, you want your bird to be on a nice raw vegetable diet for the most part. Yes, they can still have seed. Seed isn't the demon. Seed can be fine as part of a whole balanced diet. But one of the things that are often forgotten about, even with raw diets, is protein in a bird's diet. They need to be having sprouted seeds, grains and legumes, because feathers are actually made up of protein. That is pretty much all they're made up of. So if they are molting or just part of the diet anyway, you need to make sure that your bird is having access to great protein sources as well. If you haven't tried sprouting before, again, as much information as I can fit in the description will be down there for diet advice, feathers, all that kind of stuff. So do go and check out the description links to make sure that you are giving your bird the best possible diet. So one thing I'm going to say not to do is to go for any kind of shop recommended supplements. There are lots of different feather condition supplements out there, and I would suggest really strongly to avoid buying any of them. Now you may be wondering why. A lot of these are filled with all different kinds of vitamins and minerals, and if you're already feeding a really high quality diet, there is a possibility that you could overdose on certain vitamins, which can actually lead to all different kinds of problems even within the feathers. If you feed certain amounts of different types of vitamins, it actually can mess up the feathers too and make them go strange colours. So obviously there's an underlying issue there anyway, but avoid any kind of commercial supplements that are not prescribed by your vet, because they are unnecessary for your bird if you are giving them the right environment and the right diet and their health is okay, and they're just totally unnecessary and just another commercial product. You can go for natural supplements, and I say natural because I mean just things that you can add to your bird's diet which are healthy and do support feather growth, feather condition, skin condition as well. For example, you can give your birds fresh herbs, or you can give them avian safe teas. Now the tea that we have in the UK is by Polly's Natural Parrot Boutique, and she's got 3 different ones, but she does have one called Eternal Feathers, which has all of the different kind of flowers and herbs that you can add to your bird's diet, whether that's dry or as a tea or as wet herbs that have been brewed up. They're a fantastic addition, and they really do support a great healthy bird. In the US, I think the most common brand is called Greywood Manor. Their teas look amazing, so I definitely check those out. They're perfectly fine to add to your bird's diet, and it really makes it nice and varied too. So one of the other things that a lot of owners don't realise is birds kind of need quite a humid environment to have healthy skin and feathers. Now it's quite hard in the UK to have a humid environment because of our weather systems. It's always kind of cold and wet, and it just makes a lot of houses really prone to damp and mould, so it's better to avoid that over here. But you can give them lots of bathing opportunities. Now you can mist your birds with a fine mist. If you have a big bird, not a small bird, but a big bird, you can take them in the shower. Don't put them directly underneath the shower stream. You can also allow your bird to bathe in a shallow dish of water, or if you have some greens, you can wash them in water, hang them up, and a lot of budgies really love rubbing themselves over like fresh herbs and lettuce, that kind of thing that's been soaked in water. Also, the steam and the humidity is really good for your bird's nostrils. They need a nice humid environment for their nasal cavities, which again a lot of people don't realise. So giving them the opportunity to bathe as regularly as they would like is brilliant. Or if you can take them into the bathroom in a really steamy environment occasionally, that is really brilliant for them too. And if you don't know how to get your bird to bathe, if they're really fussy, I mean chip and fish are stinky little brothers, they're really fussy about going for a bath, I will be making a video on how to train your birds to bathe. So if you'd like to stick around for when that video comes out, it'd be really awesome if you could consider subscribing, and then you'll be notified as soon as I make that video. Now my next tip, which I know a lot of people aren't going to like, is please avoid touching your birds' bodies where possible. Touching them anywhere other than the head and the neck really does trigger hormones, and it's really not good for your bird. So if you are going to stroke your bird, please stroke them on the head and the neck. You can touch the other body parts if you're getting them used to sort of being touched in that area for nail trimming, for example, anything like that. But it's not, you can't just hold your bird and just stroke them all down their back like you would a dog, because you're going to end up with a very angry and hormonal bird. And if you do have one of those, again, links in the description for how to manage parrot hormones. Now, if you would like to touch your bird, as we all do, we love having a cuddle, a safe cuddle that is, you could consider washing your hands before touching your bird. It's always a good practice anyway, but some people don't do it. Or if your bird likes to be around your face, you can actually get oil blotting sheets. You can get them from Amazon. I'll leave some in the description again if you're looking for some. And you can wipe your face to get rid of some of the excess oils, because I know I'm a big oily mess. So I use my oil blotting sheets quite often. And then you're kind of eliminating as many oils from your body that could be getting onto your parrot. So that's just a little kind of tip of mine if you need it. Scampy, come. Good boy. So the next one I wanted to touch upon is molting, and as I said, when your bird is molting, you really want to be supplying them with additional protein, and you can get that from plain scrambled eggs. That's what I do. I scramble an egg for about a minute in the microwave, and that's perfectly safe for your bird. You can also sprout them some quinoa, that's really high in protein, or things like garden peas as well. If you can add peas into your bird's diet, it's often a really good one for birds who are a bit fussy with vegetables because they kind of look like seeds. So any kind of thing like that would be a really great addition. It will really support your parrot's feather growth. And the final point that I'd like to touch upon is providing your bird with enough species appropriate enrichment. So lots of foraging opportunities, appropriate toys for your birds at the right hardness of wood, and lots to do, because a busy beak is a beak that can't be fussing over feathers, plucking, that kind of thing. And it keeps them really mentally stimulated and mentally healthy, which is just as important as being physically healthy. So do make sure that your bird has plenty to do. I'm not talking about plastic toys, they are no good unless in a very specific situation. You want to be going for smaller birds, softwoods like balsa and kebabs, For bigger birds, you can go for the hardest woods, and that's absolutely fine, but make sure that you've got plenty for them to do. Avoid things like cotton ropes, shoelaces, any of these fabric toys, because they're not going to be good for your birds. They need to be shredding, they need to be destroying. That's what they do in the wild, it's what that beak is made for, and you can keep your bird's beak trim as well. And Scampy's going a little bit crazy, so that's always fun too. But just make sure that you've got lots for your birds to do, and then they can be mentally happy and not worrying about maybe picking at their feathers. So that brings me to the end of the video. I hope you found it useful, and if there's any other tips that you'd like to add about keeping feathers in great condition, please leave them in the comments. Or of course, if you have any questions, I would absolutely love to speak to you, so please do get in touch down there and let me know your thoughts. But from me and Angry Scampy, thank you so much for watching, take care and see you later.